Good morning, everyone. Tim Anderson here, aka Renfell, and welcome to my video on Baldur's Gate 3. Specifically, I'm going to be answering the question, is Baldur's Gate 3 Early Access worth it? Should you spend the money to jump in? That is a highly subjective answer, but hopefully I can give you guys some insight into what I think and my opinion on it by the end of this video. I will preface this by saying that I definitely think it's worth the money, but I will also say that I am a huge Larian Studios fan. I'm also a huge fan of the Forgotten Realms, Dungeons & Dragons, and the Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 games. So for me, it was something where I had been looking forward to jumping into this game for a very long time, since it was first announced, and I have been 100% on board for this for a very long time. And there are some ups and downs, there are some quirks to early access, but if you can look past those quirks, then it's worth it. And I'll also apologize, I'm a little stuffy this morning. My wife and I have had some sinus stuff going around over the last week, so if I sniffle a little bit and sound a little congested during this video, that's why. So without further ado, let's jump in. So I've been playing now for about 12 hours on my main character, and I started a rogue, and I have been pleasantly surprised. Before I jump into character creation and all this other stuff to kind of show the game, I do want to give my initial impressions. My initial impressions are that if you were looking for something that is the actual third game in the Baldur's Gate series, you might be somewhat disappointed. I feel that this is less of Baldur's Gate 3 in the sense that it's not, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 were very specific in the type of games that they were. They were top-down, isometric, party-based games where you had 6 people in your party. This is more of a, you can go into that top-down view, but it's more of a third-person action-adventure, open-world type of game. Only 4 people in your party, and if I had to say anything about this game, I would say that it's actually more like Divinity Original Sin 3 set in Forgotten Realms. If you've played Divinity Original Sin 1 or Divinity Original Sin 2, then this game will be extremely familiar to you, especially if you've played Divinity Original Sin 2, because this game has a whole lot in common with it in terms of the mechanics, the way the game plays, the turn-based gameplay, which is also different from the first 2 games because those were pause-based games. So there are some differences, but at the end of the day, even though there are differences between the first 2 games and this game, and even though this is more like a follow-up to Divinity Original Sin 2, Larian Studios has raised the stakes, because this game has a whole lot that Divinity 2 didn't have in terms of everything's full on motion capture. There's a heavy, if I had to look at this, I'd say they're kind of doing what Star Wars: The Old Republic did at the time, which was pretty revolutionary, where they come in and every single thing where you're interacting with someone is like a cut scene with full on voice acting and so on and so forth, and they've done a really good job with the voice acting so far. It is early access, which means there are bugs. There are quirks. I've come across a lot of things like where during cutscenes, characters' mouths aren't moving. They're not animated. Characters are stuck behind some sort of a structure or some sort of an item, they're behind a barrel, and so you're not being able to see them while they're talking. I've also come across some weird quest bugs. I've only crashed twice I think I've played 4 sessions now. And I've only crashed twice. I know some people have mentioned that they've crashed quite a lot. I have not seen those crashes. For me, the game has been fairly flawless, and I'm having a great time. I am playing on a GTX 1080, and I've got the game maxed out. It runs incredibly well, so the optimization is very well done. There's been a couple of hitches where the game has kind of frozen and paused for 5-10 seconds. I'm chalking that up as just glitchy gameplay and unoptimized gameplay sections, as opposed to anything that's game breaking, because again, the game's only crashed for me twice. and I haven't had any issues where the game has, completely. I haven't had any moments where it's become unplayable for me. Let's just put it that way. So, I think I've said all I need to say up to this point. Again, for me, I think it was well worth the money spent. I think I spent, I don't remember the exact amount. It was like $38 or something on GOG. So it was under $40 for me to pick up the early access. Not a big price issue for me. Obviously, everybody's different in depending on your economic situation. But for me, it's not an expensive early access is what I'm getting in, especially when I look at this and I see the makings of a AAA game. I realize that Larian Studios, some people look at them as an independent studio, which they are, but I think that this is definitely a AAA quality game. Obviously, it's in its early stages, so there's a lot of work left. Should be noted that for early access, you're only getting access to Act 1. And they say that by the end of the production, they'll be launching a roughly 100-hour game. Now, having played Divinity Original Sin 2, I'm not even through with that game yet because it's so big. I just started it a few weeks ago. 100 hours is very on the low end of generous, meaning that if you're doing it just for the sake of doing the primary storyline, you're going to get the 100 hours. But if you break off and do all this other stuff, you're looking at 180, 200 hours of gameplay. So Baldur's Gate 3 is shaping up to be a very, very big game. I will also say that for the purpose of early access, they said that there was around 20 hours of gameplay if you beeline straight through. I am not beelining straight through. I have been submitting bug reports. I have been quick saving, reloading, trying different avenues every time I come up against a dialogue tree, to see the various options. I'm about 12 hours in, and I feel that I've just scratched the surface of what there is, and I feel like I'm probably only about a third of the way through, and based on some of the things I've read online, which I've tried to avoid spoilers, but I think I'm somewhere around 30 to 40% through Act 1, based on where I'm playing. So I'm probably going to get 30. I'll get at least 30 hours probably out of my first run through of this. If I had to estimate on the upper end, I'd say 35 to 40 hours. But I'll definitely get 30 hours for what I'm seeing right now out of my first playthrough. And I'm very much looking forward to going back and doing this because again, on a different character, because one of the things that I really appreciate that they've done a very good job of is the permutations. So there's, I don't want to get into exaggerations here, but I mean, I see that there are hundreds of permutations, and I know they've talked about this in their streams leading up to early access. Looking at just alignment choices, your roles, your stats, the different background you choose, your class decisions, your racial decisions, all of these things impact the choices that you have available to you as well as the people in your party. So I'm very much looking forward to going back through and doing this again. My first character again was a rogue. I'm still playing that character through. And my second playthrough, I will probably be doing a ranger, and then I will do a wizard, and more than likely after that, a fighter, or the last two might be reversed. We'll see. But I plan on going through at least 3, if not 4 times over the month of October to fully get everything out of this early access that I can. I will then probably shelve this game and probably not touch it again until it actually launches. Probably, I think it's going to be next year sometime. It could be later. They've said that early access is going to be about a year. At least a year, I think, is the statement they made. So, we're looking at a game that won't be out until late next year, if not early 2022, if I did the math on that right. So without further ado, let's jump in and show you a little bit of what this early access is all about. I think one of the things they've done exceptionally well is the character creation. Because holy smokes, the character creation is incredibly in depth. I will say this though, I know some people have complained, and I'm gonna skip this cutscene because it's already been out there on the internet for like a year. Who are you? So this is the character creation process. Now I will note that a lot of people have noted in their reviews of this game that one of the things that Baldur's Gate 3 is lacking, excuse me, is any sort of like, there's no hand holding, there's no tutorials. I don't think that they've spent a lot of time yet in putting together a new user experience. They're kind of making the assumption that everyone's coming over from Divinity Original Sin 2 and is kind of already familiar with the gameplay. So there's a lot of aspects of this game when you get into actually playing where it's not explained to you, like being able to separate a character out and send them off on their own so that they're not linked to the other group. The fact that, you know, different surfaces affect different things. There's like the mechanic to dip your weapon into something, whether it's fire or poison, and then it affects that weapon for a limited amount of time, and so you can have a fire weapon or a poison weapon because you dipped it in a substance. And those sorts of things are not explained in any sort of tutorial, which I think is unfortunate, but I'm assuming they will be enhancing the new user experience later on and working more on the tutorial. So if you're someone who's never played any of the Larian games before, you might be a little bit confused by some of that stuff, but without further ado, let's jump into character creation because it's pretty in-depth. So I'm not intimately familiar with 5th edition D&D. I grew up on 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. So for me, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 were right up my alley because they used 2nd edition AD&D back when THAC0 was still a thing. And so I was very intimately familiar with creating characters in that system. I am not intimately familiar with 5th edition, so there was a little bit of just me going through all of this and reading it to kind of understand everything that's going on here, and there's a lot going on, and I still don't understand all of it. But basically, you know, you have your typical male-female selections. Excuse me, and then you'll notice that just like in Divinity Original Sin 2, you have the option to create a custom character as well as these other origin characters, which have their own backgrounds. Now, they haven't added these to early access yet, but basically Astarion is like this elven vampire character. Lae'zel is one of the Githyanki. Gale's like a human wizard. Shadowheart's a half-elf cleric. And Will is, I think he's a, from what I understand of his character, I just met him and have briefly encountered him, but I think he's like a human, but he has some sort of like succubus or demon that's attached to him. So they've all got their own unique backgrounds, and right now these are your companion characters that you can pick up along the way. So just like in Divinity Original Sin 2, they can either be your companions, or you can choose one of these characters by the time the game rolls around to launch. And they've also said that in the multiplayer, you'll be able to, you know, everybody in your party will be able to pick one of these origin characters, which will be kind of fun and interesting, I think, for the multiplayer. Excuse me, but for the purposes of early access, you can only create your unique origin character, which is your own. And then you can go in there and name your character, pick the background, and there are some, you'll notice that here on the right, insight proficiency, religion proficiency, and then over here on the left, your other proficiencies will change depending on what sort of background you've chosen. And there's you know, I don't remember how many there are here. Let's check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's 13 different options to choose from, so quite a few options. And I apologize for my voice. I may have to pause the video here for a second and just frog in my throat. So you got about 13 different backgrounds going on here. And once you've chosen the background that you're going to pick, you can then go into your race. And here again, you've got plenty of options to choose from. Elf, Tiefling, Drow, Human, Githyanki, Dwarf, Half-Elf, and Halfling. And again, all of these characters have their own bonuses, key features, and subrace traits, which also affect things on the left. You'll notice it'll affect your abilities, as well as your proficiencies. So there's a lot of different options that you can choose from here. And then also some of these have a sub-race category. Like if you choose the elf, you have high elf and wood elf. And the two different elves have different things that affect their stats. So there's a lot of different options here. Moving beyond that, you can go into the appearance, and this is where things get, I think the voice acting is a little limited here. You only get 3 choices to choose from.
Hells.
So there's
Something just woke up down here.
3 males and 3 females. But then getting into like the faces, there's lots of different faces. So let's pick face, head number 1 for example. All of these different skin colors and permutations. Then you get into all the different eye colors, for example. But one of the things that I really love, there are so many hair options. There's 35 options for hairstyles, which is pretty amazing for an early access game. I spent a good hour and a half creating my rogue character. I just sat here and spent an hour and a half, just 90 minutes of creating my character, getting him exactly how I wanted. You could choose tattoos, different types of tattoos. It looks so like Los Angeles gangster. And then you could actually have makeup, so you can give yourself eyeliner and stuff. And then if you're a human, for example, I go back to human, you also get the option for like beards. And there's 12 different beard styles for humans. I never tried the dwarf. Let's look at dwarves. Do you get the same amount of beards with dwarves? Let's see. Yep. So there's 11, excuse me. There's 11 types of beard options that you can choose, which is kind of groovy. So the character creation process is quite in depth. And once you get through with your appearance, you can then go into the class section. And again, this is where there are tons of options. You've got 6 classes to choose from. Now, those are just the initial classes. There's also subclasses. So for like the cleric, there's life domain, light domain, trickery domain, and then you can choose your deity, which doesn't change a whole lot other than it gives you some differences in it's just fluff, and then you get your initial cantrips and prepared spells, which kind of stay the same, but you can choose to go in here and customize these in terms of what you start with. Like, these are what but these are your prepared ones, which is pretty groovy. But you've got cleric, fighter, ranger, rogue, warlock, and wizard. So you have a pretty good range of like the base classes of Dungeons and Dragons. You'll also notice as you start playing the game that you get options. As you level up, you're going to start getting options for like subclasses. So there's a lot of specialization that happens not only just in character creation, but also during the actual playthrough of the game as you're leveling up characters. Now my characters, I'm 12 hours in. I'm only level 3. This is not a fast-paced game. This is a game where things take time. You're not getting tons of experience points for everything. It's very much in that sense, it's very much like the old school Dungeons and Dragons, kind of scenarios. And if you look back to Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, progression was also not very fast. You might get your first level or 2 quickly, but once you get to like second level, it starts taking a little bit of time. So you can expect to be spending several hours adventuring in between, leveling up your character. Now, I don't know how many levels they're planning to put in this game long term, but I can tell you that after 12 hours of gameplay, I'm only level 3. That may be because I'm taking so much time to explore things, and I'm not, rushing through gameplay and trying to complete like primary quests. Like, I'm wandering all over the map, and I am getting involved in lots of different combat scenarios, and I am reloading the game and trying different things out. So, my 12 hours is a little subjective because my 12 hours have been spent heavily exploring as opposed to just beelining my way through the content of the game. So anyway, character creation, incredibly in depth. Get through and you get into your skills. And this is again where you can go in here and they kind of give you a couple of proficiencies, or a few depending on your class race combo, And then you can choose. You say, I don't want that. I want something else. I don't want to go with intimidation. I want to go with investigation, or I want to go with religion. You can change your background and your proficiencies, which allows you to further adapt and specialize your character. And then you get to my favorite part, which is the assigning of ability points. Now, Larian Studios has said that they may choose to change this in the future to be more in line with what Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 had, which is where you had a total number of points that you then roll for. At least I remember them saying that. I could be wrong on that now because they may have something that's more set in stone. But as it is right now, you've got this system where they give you a recommended setup for your race class combo, but you can choose to go ahead and take points away out of something. I always like to take everything back down to 10 and then go from there. And from here, you can choose to adjust your strength, dex, con, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, all the stats that you're used to. And, they've showed, if whatever your class is, they'll show there's a star next to the primary stat or stats for that character. So in this case, I might choose to take this up to 15. Now that's the max I can take for this race class combo. And then, you can adjust these other ones. So, it's like right now it costs 0 points. But then you get to 12 and now it costs 1 point. And I've only got 9 points left. So the higher you go, the more points they take. But basically, you can just give your character, the most rounded out section that you want and selection that you want and go from there. Now you can also choose to come in here, and there's one more step in here, which...
Tell me, who do you dream of at night?
Who do you dream of at night? I'm not going to spoil this, but this is kind of a cool little feature where there's going to be things that happen, and I don't think I'm spoiling anything at this point because everyone out there has been watching Larian Studios previews of the game over the last year. So which is why I skipped past the cutscene in the beginning. The premise is that you were kidnapped by the Mind Flayers. You had a tadpole put in your head, and you're having visions, and you're seeing things, and you're finding yourself having access to these unique powers, for good or for bad. And then there's this additional thing going on where as you're having these visions and going to sleep, there's going to be this person who appears to you during your evenings, and this allows you to pick what that person looks like. So it's very much like the character creation process, except you're picking something that's not you. Now I'm going to back out of this actually, and I'm going to choose to load my most recent saved game. Kind of give you guys a taste of what the game looks like and plays like to kind of wrap up this preview. Loading times will vary depending on whether or not you've installed it on a normal hard drive or a solid state. I have mine loaded on a regular old hard drive, so load times for me take, in most cases, it's less than a minute, but there are some scenarios where it can take a couple of minutes to load if it's coming into a new big scene or something. Gameplay-wise, verticality in this game is a big thing, and they've previewed a lot of this in their videos in terms of, jumping. Jumping is a big thing in this game, and so you'll find that there's lots of chests and hidden nooks and crannies around the world that you can only access by jumping. And there are abilities that some of your characters can get which can enhance the jump distance, which is very important in some cases because you might find yourself being able to jump to a location but not being able to jump back because of the way the landscape is aligned. And that may be something that they address in a future patch, but in the meantime, you have to kind of be conscious of that, and I would say that quick save is your friend. Quick save everything frequently, etc. So I last played, and I'm not going to start this particular encounter yet because there's a big quest here, and I haven't figured out the quest, so I don't want to spoil that for people. So this is my party here. I've got my main character, Renvale, of course, and then I have Gale the Wizard. Oh, by the way, Gale is my favorite companion out of all of these. He's slightly sarcastic, highly intelligent, kind of a chaotic good character. I have a feeling that I will be taking him on every run through that I do when I don't have my own wizard, just because he's so much fun. Shadowheart is the half elf cleric, and if I had to make a guess, I'd say she kind of feels like a chaotic neutral, slightly evil character in the sense that she's very selfish, and so she's always looking out for herself and not anyone else. And then in the back we've got Lezel, I think is her name, I had to pronounce, and she's a Githyanki warrior. She's amazing. She's highly also self-conscious, self-motivated, and tends to get upset with you if you're choosing to help other people as opposed to focus on us and what our group needs. But Shadowheart and Lizelle are constantly kind of bickering with each other, and then Lizelle and Gale are having conversations about the astral plane because he's highly curious, and so there's a lot of back and forth banter that goes on between characters, and depending on the characters that you have in your party, that changes. So the dynamic of your group changes. But I like this group makeup. It's not the perfect makeup, but it does work for me. So typical scroll in, scroll out, pan around your characters and so on and so forth. There are some quirkinesses. For example, like right now, you notice that even though I have edge panning on, moving up and down, it doesn't want to pan. So if I use the keyboard to initiate the pan and then go back, now the panning is working again. So there's some weird wonkiness going on with the it's early access again, so there's some functionality that they have yet to improve upon, but that's not a big deal. Now this is where it gets into the overwhelming nature of this game, because they don't have an in-game tutorial for you, and even I, coming from Divinity Original Sin 2, I had to figure a lot of this stuff out, and it is quite confusing and can be confusing. So you have kind of your basic main hand attack, and range attack stuff going on over here. Then you've got like this is the one that they don't show you, like dip. Coat your weapon in a surface to deal additional damage, and like that's never explained to you. It's just I'm moving my mouse over things and reading, and it's like, oh, so that's how that works. So throw is interesting because it allows you to take an item from your inventory and throw it, which you could throw it at an enemy. You could lots of interesting things you could do with that. There's dash, which is hugely important to combat. Knock unconscious, which can also be important. Help, which is interesting because in this game you don't immediately die. When you fall in combat, you'll generally have several turns during which a character falls unconscious, and they make a saving throw versus death every turn, and you have a limited amount of time to help them back up, and they'll get back up with 1 hit point. But creatures can keep attacking them while they're down, and so combat is very, very tricky in this game. And they don't have difficulty settings right now because it's in early access, so they're testing like the base difficulty. And I can say this, combat is incredibly challenging, and I die a lot. Quick save, again, is your friend. Shove is hugely important, and this goes back to the verticality of this game, because it's very important. Being high up gives you an advantage over the battlefield. So let's see if I can find a place here. I gotta look at my map. I don't think I'm near anything that I can climb on. Let's go over here and see if I can maybe get up on this rock. No, I can't. And there's some gnolls over there who I've chosen not to fight at the moment. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to find anything to jump on at the moment. But verticality is a big deal in this game. And when you get into some of these encounters in the various villages and so on and so forth, you're going to find that it becomes very important to get up high because it gives you better range and things. But I can show you the jump functionality here. So here's a bridge. It's the only way to get across is to jump. So you actually pick the jump functionality and you jump across like that, which I think is it's a really cool feature. But it's not just about getting across horizontal surfaces. It's also used to get over or to get up. Now notice that Gale cannot jump across this. Gale's jump is not big enough. He can't. He doesn't have. He just can't jump that far. So thankfully, Lizelle has this ability called Jump, which I can't use because she needs to rest at the camp before it's usable again, because I used it to get across this bridge in the first place. But that's the ability. Lizelle's ability helps Gale jump longer distances. So this is just a really cool feature of this game. But the shove feature, which I was talking about, is really useful if you're up high and an enemy jumps up to you, or you can sneak up on an enemy who's up high and then shove them off, because they'll take fall damage when they fall, or they'll if they don't get killed instantly by the fall damage, they'll be knocked prone for a turn or two, depending on the height from which they fall, and depending on if they've got any perks that can avoid that, like a safe fall ability. But it's an incredibly useful tool, slightly overpowered. I have a feeling they'll be tweaking the shove ability later on. We'll see. But in the meantime, let's maybe see if I can showcase. I have not done this encounter yet,
Something tore right through these people. They didn't stand a chance.
So I don't know what I'm about to encounter with this, but I wanted to preview a little bit of like the combat, the conversation system, and maybe some of the combat before I wrap this video up.
The beast reeks of brimstone and offal. Every breath is thick with blood.
Now, I don't have the ability to talk to animals, so I can't talk to these creatures. Now, if I had the ability to talk to animals, there would be a further conversation option at this point.
You hear what comes next before you see it. The sharp snapping of bones and a yelp of pain as her body starts to twist and undulate. Bones snap as the hyena is hollowed from the inside out, forming a vessel for something new.
So I have options here. Try to comfort the hyena, watch the beast die, strike while the beast is vulnerable. I'm going to try to comfort the hyena because I'm a good character.
Hurts. It hurt.
Her belly splits like a rotten fruit, birthing a frenzy of claws and fangs.
Now, I'm surprised I actually had a dialogue option there where she spoke to me, because I don't have the speak to animal ability. Okay, so they just initiated combat. It says pack tactics. I am surprised, which means they get the first encounter, and I'm probably going to die. We'll see here. So because I'm surprised, I can't do anything. She can. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cast Bless on my party. I got 3 of them. And I'm going to coat my weapon with poison. Gale, on the other hand, is going to try to cast Sleep. Okay, I got 3 of them, it looks like. And we'll go to the next turn. She can run up and attack something, so I'm going to have her use Dash. I'm going to have her run up here. And then I'm going to... I don't think she has enough to do anything at the moment. But she's at least up here in combat. So I've got 3 of... Okay. So these are birthing gnolls somehow. Okay. So now I get the option to attack. I'm going to choose to pin down the one that just got born. Okay. She can run up as well. And let's... I don't think I can charm person. Let's try this guiding bolt. Okay, got one of the gnolls down. So notice these are low level 1 creatures. I only got 10 experience points. So I'm not getting a lot of experience points here. And I missed. Move forward a little bit. Got a critical hit. They all turned into gnolls now. I did not know that gnolls were born from hyenas. Now this is a level 4 hyena, and I don't know where she's going. These are level 1 creatures, so these have not been overly difficult. Switch to melee, and I get an extra attack because I'm a rogue. Let's go ahead and attack this. Gale. That might be blocked. No, I got... Okay, knocked it prone. Let's go hit it while it's down. Another one ran off. She's coming back now. Okay, go back to my bow. I missed. I'm going to let it come closer. Move him up a little bit. I was able to knock it prone. Very groovy. It's too far away to hit, but I can run up. Maybe use dash. At least get me in range. So let me see if I can maneuver her around. Possibly. Let's see if I can get up here and show you what the shove looks like. Okay. Shove. I don't... if it'll actually show you, so it shows that it's going to go up and over. So I'm going to shove this creature. And it took fall damage and died. So I was able to end the encounter.
Never seen that before.
I'd prefer not to see it again, that's for sure.
So they're talking about, they just saw...
Let them come. We will rip them from top to tail.
Yeah, they just saw gnolls being birthed from hyenas. By the way, that was a first for me. I haven't seen this encounter yet. So that was interesting. So, hopefully I've given you guys a little bit of an overview of the combat, the character creation. Is early access worth it? I think it is, but that's just me personally. I'm having a lot of fun. Like I said, I'm about 12 hours in, and it's been an incredible journey so far. I honestly haven't had this much fun since possibly, in terms of with the turn-based RPG, looking back to like Dragon Age Origins, the first game, like I'm getting that same feeling from this in the sense that it's really drawing me in. Now, I also felt that with Divinity Original Sin 2. So those are all good games to compare this to. Obviously, since they made that game, this is a spiritual successor to all of those games, if you want to be blunt about it. So yeah, I think early access is well worth it. It's, at least from what I understand, it's $40, if not a little bit less. So it's not, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a $70 game, like a lot of these new PlayStation games are. It's not 60, it's not 70, it's, $40. So for an early access, it's fairly inexpensive. And the huge thing about this for me is that if I can get 25, 30 hours of gameplay just from Act 1 from a single character, I'm already getting more gameplay than I get out of a lot of AAA games in terms of the amount of time that I'm investing into the game. And then considering I'll be able to get a fairly unique experience the second time around and the third time around, it's well worth my money in every sense of the word. Again, it's not really Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, so if you're expecting, the 6-person party system and top-down isometric, not really. I mean, you can do this. You could choose to go into what they call the tactical view, which kind of gives you a top-down. Not a big fan of that view, but there's lots of options here. There's lots of similarities to Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, more similarities to Divinity Sin Original. Divinity Original Sin 2, excuse me. But at the end of the day, the gameplay is incredibly unique. The combat is very challenging. Haven't even gotten into like the surfaces, and if you played Original Sin 2, it's not quite as fire is not as dangerous in this game as it was in that game. But surfaces being coated with acid, water, fire, oil, so on and so forth, those all have different effects, and then you can cast spells on those ground covered items, which causes more chaos in the combat field. So combat is very strategic, especially when you talk about the verticality. So it's very important to send characters out to scout ahead and position your characters strategically for combat scenarios. This was a very easy encounter because those were level 1 creatures, other than the hyena at the end that was level 4, but I was able to easily wipe out those level 1. Now, I can say that yesterday I went into a cave and found some spiders that were level 4 phase spiders. That were level 2, excuse me, and then there was a spider broodmother that was level 4. I did an hour and a half of trying to beat that encounter over and over and over, and never was able to beat the encounter, and I finally just said, screw it, I'll come back when I'm higher level. I was level 3, mobs were level 2, and level 4, and I just couldn't, no matter what strategies I tried, no matter what options I took, what items I used, I was not able to beat those stupid face spiders. And I did kill a couple of them, and this is where the balance comes into play. Like I was only getting like 5 experience points or 10 experience points from these level 2 phase spiders, and yet later on I was killing some goblins in town that are like level 3 or something. They were giving me 25 experience points, but yet I was able to wipe out the goblin encounter without dying, and they were higher level creatures than the spiders. And so it's just this, there's a lot of balance that needs to be done still for this game. But again, like I said, early access, there are some quirks, there are some bugs, there's some things to consider, but overall I definitely think it's worth it. And if you enjoy role-playing games, turn-based role-playing games, then I think you're going to have a lot of fun with this. Again, it's not Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 specifically, it's a spiritual successor, so you can't come into this expecting it to be the same as those old games, but highly, I wouldn't call it addictive, but I will say it's a lot of fun. And if you like Forgotten Realms lore and the Dungeons and Dragons experience, this is going to give you what you're looking for. So hopefully that gives you guys a good glimpse into this game. That's longer than I thought. I thought I was going to do a 20-minute video on it. I'm like 42 minutes in right now. So a little bit of a lengthier overview, but hopefully you enjoy. And if any of you want to get together and do some multiplayer at any point in time, let me know. Otherwise, I'm streaming most mornings early over on Twitch. I usually start streaming 6 or 7 in the morning Central Time. And I'll stream for 2-3 hours usually, sometimes 4 hours, but I usually am wrapped up by 11 o'clock, because that's when Chris gets done with her classes, and that's when we go off and do other things, and I do other work related to the Saga of Lucemia and other projects. So either I'll see you in stream over on Twitch early morning Central Times, or I'll maybe see you in some multiplayer for Baldur's Gate 3. Either way, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next game. Cheers.